It's the week of Halloween, so we are talking spooky stuff on Panelism. Hello.
That's my Halloween spooky voice. Go on, sorry.
Hello, and welcome to Panelism, the podcast where we talk about comic books and graphic novels worth having on your shelf. I'm Todd A.
And I'm Taylor Trask.
Oh, man, we need to back up and do Simpsons, I'm Odd A.
Oh, yes. Oh, man.
And you are Slayer Trask.
Slayer Trask.
Slayer Mask.
There you go. Yes, perfect.
Yeah, puns in the moment.
Man, they've done 30 of those. How on earth are they still coming up with ideas? Because that's, Jesus. In general, but then for a 30th Treehouse of Horror, like what else?
Some might argue that they're not coming up with ideas.
Well, that's another episode for another day.
I don't even know. I can't even speak to that because I haven't watched it in 20 of those years probably.
I haven't seen it. When did I last watch Simpsons religiously? Probably 2010. So it's been at least 10 years for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. I think 97 was the last time I watched regularly.
That was a good time because that was when Hank Scorpion, I think, that had capped shortly before then. So that was a good run.
Well, I'm excited that we in our very last episode we said, hey, more and more we're talking about other stuff besides comics and graphic novels, but today we are talking about comics and graphic novels. So this is a great thing to do. Week of Halloween, we had like a thematic episode to talk about. Here we are.
Yeah, yay. We got two. You're going to talk about a book. I'm going to talk about a book. I think last time we did a Halloween flavored episode was probably 2 years ago when I mentioned Infidel, which great, awesome haunted house monster book that is also very topical. So go find Infidel on Image and that episode. I forget which episode number it is, as I usually do, but that review still holds. And I think that book, I'm going to reread that next week for Halloween as well, in addition to the book I'm going to talk about. But we'll go with you first.
As I was scrambling to find when we talked about that, it was episode 91.
There you go.
And on episode 90, we talked about Harrow County Volume 1, which was another spooky book, which is also worth checking out.
Man, I forgot we talked about Harrow County. That was you, though, right? That wasn't me. Yeah.
Have you gone back and read it?
No, and I keep seeing it in the shop, and I'm always like, why did we talk about this? I had just completely forgotten that we had any conversation about it, and I might have to go back to listen to the episode and then go to the shop and pick it up, just so I have that context. Well, you liked it, didn't you?
I did. And in fact, it's one of those that kind of slipped off my radar because it does end on like a cliffhanger, and there was some weird set of circumstances. Like I read it for the comic book club I was participating in, and then I think they did not have a copy of Volume 2, or I thought, I'm going to just buy it on Comixology. I don't remember what the circumstances were, but it was like it left on this cliffhanger, and I immediately wanted to find out about Volume 2. I was surprised I liked Volume 1 so much. Then it slipped off the radar, but now I think both volumes are in the Comixology Unlimited. So
excellent. Harrow County sounds like a Bill Monroe song that never got recorded.
Oh yeah. And it evokes
Harrow
that
County.
too. Yeah. They picked it perfectly. It's like the color scheme and everything just fits into that vibe. I will have a hard turn away from that for the comic I've picked today.
Okay.
But I think it's a great one to mention. And you know what? I didn't even look up the. I'm quickly as I Google the actual publisher because I don't think it is a comic book publisher.
Would some guy just hand it to you on the street as you were walking down?
And I wish I knew more of
kid,
the story
read
behind
this. It's my dirty magazine. Okay.
I meant it was a Andrews McMeel Publishing.
Okay.
So not, that's why I was saying it's a great pick for us, because it's not a Marvel DC, but it's also not even like an Image or a Drawn and Quarterly. Like, this is one of those, picks that's out there.
It's got the U logo with two kind of eyes on it. So if you've ever seen that logo, you'll know. I just never knew that's what it was, but I've seen that logo many times on comics, especially in like Barnes and Noble, where they get a little bit more literary. In now and then. So, okay, great. So now I'm excited. What is it? What's the pick?
Well, so this is Fangs by Sarah Anderson. And I previously talked about Sarah Anderson. The other reason I say it's like kind of a odd pick is because, not that you wouldn't expect this, but Sarah is really well known for this comic called Sarah's Scribbles, which is almost like a newspaper style comic. Like, I mean, it's very updated and contemporary, but it's, often 4 panels. Please forgive me for this comparison if this does not land with you, Sarah, but almost like a modern day Kathy or something. It's like these are the travails of a character that is sort of Sarah in her cartoon form, and it's not, Sarah Scribbles is not drawn in a comic book style so much as in a serial cartoon style or serial comic style.
It looks a lot like the Oatmeal, and that's not a slam. That's
exactly.
That's just a positioning statement. Like, if you had to put in a category, the Oatmeal would be there too.
So I in episode number 58, I reviewed one of these collections of Sarah Scribbles called Adulthood is a Myth. That's our
right.
Episode. Yeah.
I grabbed that one too, right after that one.
Yeah, so last year at Comic-Con, I randomly, I saw it in the book, but it ended up being this panel that had Whitney Gardner, who had written a book that I had reviewed called Chaotic Good, and Sarah Anderson was on this panel, and then Thomas Lennon, like of the State and Reno 911, because he had written this young adult book, which I then talked about later in another episode, I believe. So it was just this, I loved seeing this, and it was very unexpected to see these people. They have very different styles of work. What Sarah was promoting at that time, and this just like blew my mind because I was familiar with Sarah Scribbles, was she had done a book called Cheshire Crossing, written by Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, the novel that became the Matt Damon movie.
Okay.
So it was this crazy, like, sort of science fantasy book, and I'm sorry that it's been so long that I've sort of forgotten the back of book description for Cheshire Crossing, but it was something like several of the female protagonists from nursery rhymes or fairy tales had all been sent to live in an insane asylum, as though like Alice and whoever else, the society had decided like, oh, you're crazy for telling these stories.
Yeah.
So, and the style was, for Sarah, the illustration style was so different than Sarah Scribbles that I was really blown away. So Fangs follows up on that, and you'll recognize it because it is very much like a flat 2-dimensional black and white illustration style, and but it draws a little bit more heavily, I would say, from like manga and comic books in that way. So to me, it's like she just sort of, I mean, to me, it's and I mean this in the highest praise. It's a simple style, but it's like elegant in that way. It's not comic book-ish with like a lot of action and a lot of details into it and stuff like that.
Okay.
But she chose this, she wanted to write a vampire story. And I also apologize because I know there's like great backstory here, and I intentionally sort of avoided it. Like, I would see Fang's updates on her Instagram and go, this looks really intriguing. I'm following along, but I wasn't on her Patreon, or what I later discovered was this site called tapas.io, tapas.io. That is where Fangs lives.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was like through
I haven't even heard of Tapas.io. This is going to be a whole rabbit hole for me to fall down.
Yeah, it's like a web comic reader.
That's amazing. Love it.
So she was setting it up. So she was taking the sort of Sunday comics style of here's like a 4-panel story and putting it out. The story is about a 300-year-old vampire, just known as Vamp, who runs into this grungy dude who's a werewolf at a bar. And it's about their like romance. It's not, there's not a lot of chase in it. Like there's not a lot of pursuit in that romance. It's sort of like they meet their soulmate, and then it's about this vampire and this werewolf, like their daily life. So there's and because she's doing it in largely like, even if it's not 4 panels that are sort of geometrically like perfect, there'll be short stories with like a punchline, so it's done on a page or 2.
Oh, is it like Wilson in that respect?
It
where
is.
Each little vignette is like each page or
Exactly.
series of panels doesn't necessarily. It could go in order, but it doesn't necessarily pick up where the last one left off.
Right. And
Okay.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was on my mind to bring up as well. So it's like, I'm not to spoil, but just to give an example of the very second page is this 4 panel of, they've met at the bar, and she says, tell me, boy, what is your type? And he says, goth girls. And she says, no, you're blood type. And then there's like, cut to her face with like the fangs sticking out and the big smile, and, but it's in a cute manga style. And it's sort of that kind of punchline and that resolution of an idea, So whatever the backstory is, and I apologize that I don't know it, but whether it was like the munificence of her patrons, or like if this was Kickstarted or whatever, or if she just got a book deal, it was the entire story. It has been put together in this super cute, like just beautiful little book. It's a red cover book. It's about like 8 inches by 5. It's sort of like an A5 paper size. And it has a black edge to the paper. So you're holding this red cover with this black paper in it, just on the edges. But then because it's written in this easy to follow, like sort of strip style, I just sat down and read the whole thing in under an hour probably.
Oh, I love it.
And it's just this like cute story. And, it's, I think I probably laughed out loud a couple times. I don't think it's meant to be sort of hilarious or anything like that. It's really, I think, just like a pure expression of like, her bio at the end says something like, Sarah Anderson likes cats, coffee, and covens. So it's like, yeah, this is just sort of this
The best Tinder profile ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Cats,
like,
coffee, and covens. Come on.
What I have come to describe, and I may fit parts of this description as well, as like a normcore goth. Like this is, when I met Sarah at that panel, this was not a woman in like, a black Lolita dress with like heavy, makeup on or anything like that, but just probably a girl that enjoys like dark stories and that sort of vampire aesthetic. And I'm sorry, I just described her as a woman who enjoys that. And, so I think that comes out in this is like, it's a very domestic story, but she's chosen this subject matter, and it lets her run with it in these more fun ways than I've seen in a lot of like pop culture, stories of vampires and werewolves. This is like if you boil it down to its essence, you might go like, oh, like Twilight or something, but that's not it at all. It's not that it's intentionally making fun of it. It's just telling that story in a different genre, in like I'm trying to remember the word for like the manga comic that's all about love. I'm sorry, some listener will know that, but that's what it's like. So it's, the boy turns into a wolf once a month. And we'll and the girl can't be in sunlight, but they make it work. So it's just a really cool little book. It's something you can, I would say for sure, get the hardcover of this. You're just not going to get the experience.
The cover looks like a really elegant, almost like New Yorker magazine cover, just with her in the mirror, and then you see her reflections missing in the mirror, but she still has the clothes, which is kind of fun. And just hearing you say the pages are black, like as an artifact, I think that definitely requires a physical pickup of some kind, and why not just go hardcover?
Yeah, I don't think they even made a soft cover of it, so I think it's probably. And I'm
I always
curious
get annoyed.
what
I get
image you're
annoyed,
looking
by the
at.
way, when I go into a shop and I have like a hardcover version of a book I love, and I see just a crappy, bad softcover
man.
version. I'm like, get that out of here. Like I almost want to buy it just to remove it from the shop and just be like, nope, nope.
And I don't think they don't need it at all, because if you don't want to if you want to save some bucks and whatever, then just read it on tapas.io. You can read the whole thing there. You can read it in the same amount of time, but it is worth having that little artifact, because it's going to look so cool on your shelf. I don't know exactly what cover image you're seeing, because the one I've seen is like she's in a black dress and she's holding it out on the side so it looks like bat wings.
Different cover.
It almost looks like a it has this filigree around the edges, so it almost looks like an Edgar Allan Poe collection or something.
I see that cover too. It's all red and black. There's no white.
Yeah.
The one I'm looking at, this might be the soft cover, but she's posing in the mirror. That's the one that looks like the New Yorker cover. I actually like the other one better because it looks more old fashioned. It looks like it's a book from the 20s.
That's a great word. It is definitely like old fashioned. So this thing is just going to sit on your shelf or on your coffee table, and people are going to think it's like this, this old collection of Edgar Allan Poe stories or something, and find that it's this cute vampire comic. And I think I'm meant to lead off with this. Are you a Halloween person?
I am, yes.
Oh,
Very
I'm
much
not
so.
at all. I don't care for it.
What?
And yeah, honestly, more than anything else, this is probably one of the major reasons why I'm a single man. Because this is, I don't understand it. Maybe it's just Southern California thing. This is women's favorite holiday, and
I'm sure.
I don't like dislike it. I just don't care. Like I'm just like, well, I don't.
Because girls can.
Dress
Okay,
up
so
and whatever.
women can have more fun dressing up than men can, and I say this because and yeah, men can have fun too, but I almost feel like our costumes have to be bigger productions. Like we have to build an Iron Man costume of some kind, in our garage, whereas women can get really creative with very little and have like an amazing sort of thing. And yeah, there's some men who I'm sure can do that too, but it's just like, I feel like if men don't go all out, we end up looking like Jim from The Office, where his Halloween costumes were literally just like a name tag that said like Steve and just random. It's just like, it's so lazy that it's just like, you kind of have to, I've always been pulled in each direction.
Yeah. I wouldn't, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily break it down by gender in that way. Because I think I don't know. Maybe just women have easier like package costumes or something. I don't know.
Let's make it more specific. I think geeky women and geeky men are going to want to do more. I think like make more of a production out of it more often than women do. Not that women aren't. There's some amazing cosplay that's really elaborate, so I'm not putting that down. I'm just saying women, I think geek women have like a better time just going, hey, we'll just pull some stuff together and here we go. And like, this is just as legitimate. And like, they're confident in it, where we're like, well, shoot, I got to be working on it for a month beforehand, and you're not going to see it until the day. I think more about what's really coming to mind is when the South Park Halloween episode happened, and the 4 boys like dressed up as each one of the Avengers, but it was so complicated they had to like go home and assemble it. And, meanwhile, like other people in the town were just putting on a sport jacket and sunglasses and walking around as Psy. And it was like, that was, and there was like 10 Psy or 100 different Psys. This is back when Gangnam Style was raging.
That Psy.
Psy. Sorry.
I just remember one time trying to be part of a couple's costume where we were going to be Speed Racer and Trixie or something like whatever her name was, and it was like, the problem is my 80% nature of like, man, I can get the first 80% done really quickly and really well. Last 20%, real hard for me to push that over the edge,
Okay.
I need a finisher in my team, and I got close. And then I just realized, like, wow, all the effort I've already put into it, if I don't somehow muster up that much effort again, I'm still going to look like an idiot who has to explain his costume to everybody.
Yep.
And I think that was the year I ended up just cutting holes in a brown paper bag and going as a Scrabble letter.
That's actually clever. I like that.
Yeah, that ended up being the couple's costume. And that was the last time I've ever worn a costume like that. Well, except for the Batman costume I wore in a music video. But, that, yeah, I'm not a dresser-upper. Anyway, but all that to say, what I do like about Halloween is that within that group of excited people, who, people who are enthusiastic about the holiday, it's not one thing or the other. It's not like it has to be gory, scary movies or, cutesy kids in costumes. There's like all little subgenres in Halloween. And this is in that cute, romantic, whatever the word for a romantic manga is, that's where this is. I wish I'd looked that up.
One question for you as I'm browsing different screenshots and stuff of it, I'm noticing that it looks like she's the only character who wears a black shirt and everybody else is kind of in white or, just kind of different layers of white. Does that carry through, or is that just these particular panels I'm looking at where she's...
No, that definitely carries through. And I think there's a, and I think that's part of that style of making it like a serial comic. Yeah. Where there has to be a symbol, like a uniform that they're always in. The boy is always in a very easy version of a flannel shirt.
Yeah, plaid.
Yeah. Shujo, is that the romantic manga? Somebody correct me. Anyway.
I literally know nothing about what you're talking. I've never heard of a term for romantic manga, so you're at a level beyond my understanding.
It's like all subgenres and stuff,
I appreciate, here's the thing. I respect manga, I appreciate it, but like that's my precise problem with it is that kind of you have to kind of learn an entire lexicon of like art appreciation to kind of really get into it. So I just sort of peck at the edges. Like the only manga on my shelf right now, I believe, is Death Note Volume 1, which is amazing. That whole Death Note series is bloody incredible. One more question. I am, as I'm Googling, also seeing various screenshots from What We Do in the Shadows. My guess is people just making jokes about it or that kind of thing. It doesn't have that sort of irreverent, vamp, lycanthrope sort of thing, does it? I mean, that's just it's its own sweet little story. It's not like it's trying to be that
right.
Irreverent.
I wouldn't say it's irreverent. It's where it's breaking horror conventions around vampires and werewolves, is breaking them in like a cute way. It's and in that coupley way, not in a like any kind of insider joke or making fun of the genre or anything.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great point as well, because What We Do in the Shadows is the kind of spooky stuff I do like.
I just want to give one more shout out to our boy Haley Joel Osment, which we talked about last time.
Boy.
And just say, I ended up after that episode, I ended up rewatching because I ended up getting back on Hulu for a moment or two to catch up on Archer, which is a whole other discussion. Last season of Archer is happening. It's actually really good. So if you stepped away from Archer for 3 seasons because you're like, I don't know what they're doing, like it actually they come back in full force in this final season. So check it out. Anyway, I was watching that episode of What We Do in the Shadows with Haley Joel Osment, and it's just as good the second time or third time through. It's so good. And it's just that we've talked about the movie before. I don't know if we've ever talked about the show in depth. Maybe we had. Did we do that back during our coronavirus?
You know what?
Episode?
I think when we mentioned it, then I wasn't fully caught up on that. That was, if we go back all the way to that like first pandemic episode, I was deep into devs at the time, and you were into What We Do in the Shadows.
That's right. Yeah.
And I don't think we've synced in a show since we both exchanged those obsessions.
That's true. That What We Do in the Shadows TV show, like you turned me on to the movie.
I think.
You turned me on to the movie. I loved the movie a lot. And then when I heard they're doing a TV show, I was like, oh man, what could they possibly do that's better than the movie? And then they're like, well, Taika and Jermaine are gonna basically make it and showrun it. And even then I was like, yeah, but what are they gonna do? And then they announced the cast. And even then I was like, yeah, but what are they gonna do? Like, I mean, literally every single thing about that show is so perfect. And yeah, season 1 is amazing. Season 1 hooked me. Season 2, it's like they, like any good show, they figured out really what the dynamic is, especially with that cast. And you can tell that cast really figured each other out too. So there's some of the timing is just so brilliant. And Matt Berry, Matt Berry's a genius in anything, but like Matt Berry is like he's amazing. But what the real, I mean, if I have an MVP of that show, it's the guy who plays Colin Robinson. Like that more than anything else is what makes that TV show worthwhile. Like if you're going to say, why do we need a TV show too? Colin Robinson is why. That entire character, it never gets old. It's amazing. And then like they can do stuff like, and it's all in continuity. The movie characters show up all the time. It's wonderful. Which is amazing too.
The last episode of the first season is just when Wesley Snipes like Skypes into the
Oh, that's
Vampire
right.
Coven
Yeah.
episode. It's amazing.
Yeah, but no, the Haley Joel Osment one's great. But
Yeah.
why did I bring that up? I don't remember.
Well, we were talking about the irreverence of this. Yeah,
that's right.
And,
yeah.
and it's and whether I'm pronouncing that right or not, I think that shoujo manga is the best area to put this in, because it is like it is that like sort of innocent romantic thing. And what I think once you center it in a genre like that, it makes all these little choices more interesting. Like when she gets, he's making dinner and he cuts his finger, and instantly Vamp appears next to him and like is licking her lips, and he's like, "Don't be gross," Or when he has to like lock her up somewhere because he's like, it's a full moon, so I'm about to change. Or then there's like a whole bunch of cute like girl and her dog episodes where he is the wolf. And it's, so there, I don't know. I just think once you get that feel of it, it just makes it all the more enjoyable. And like I said, definitely grab the hardcover.
Well, this is good because we can transition seamlessly into my pick, which is also a vampire book.
Nice.
Little more hardcore than yours. I think yours is. Oh, I should have asked you before I forget. You think yours all ages, or do you think it would be better, sort of young adult and onward?
Yeah, I think that's how to say it. It's not like inappropriate for all ages, but I just don't think. I think those references and stuff are going to be lost on younger readers.
Okay.
So it's sort of like you have to have that history of what they're talking about. You have to understand like a good boy like joke when they're talking about a dog, but in this case it's a wolf who's actually her boyfriend. It's like there's a lot of life you got to have in your head to get it all, I think. Okay. So yeah, it's
cool. Well, okay, so my pick is a vampire pick, a lot more hardcore than that. Actually kind of a pretty well-known book. It's 30 Days of Night. I think some people might be like, wait, 30 Days of Night? You mean the movie? No, I mean the comic book that, like most, remember we talked about History of Violence a couple episodes ago? There was that run between like 06 and 09 where, and that includes the first Iron Man movie, but I would argue some of the best comic movies ever were released and made during that time, and most of them were more indie. Scott Pilgrim, History of Violence, 30 Days of Night is one of those too, and it kind of, I think it came out in 07. Comic came out in, I believe I should have had this figured out, 2002. So it was published in 02 by IDW. IDW's, I hold them up, Image, and probably, Drawn and Quarterly, obviously. But them, Image, and Boom, probably my three favorite, sort of mainstream comic indie publishers. IDW has just been doing some great stuff. But 30 Days a Night, it is definitely a vampire story, limited small series. The whole thing's available on Comixology right now to purchase or download. You can get the 3 single issues or the trade paperback. Either way, here's my pitch. And so go ahead.
Let me nail you down on a detail. When you say a limited small series, what are we talking about?
3 issues.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
Just 3? I thought it was 6.
No. They're slightly longer issues, but it's very short, very compact. That's one of the reasons I like it, because when I first heard about it, I kind of imagined this sprawling Walking Dead sort of like, oh God, I can't read about vampires for 25 books, and it's not that. Very short, and I think it would get really tedious if they went any longer than that, so I'm glad they didn't. It's just a nice start to finish story. But, they could have picked it up any time later. They could 20 years later, they could do a sequel if they wanted to, and it would work. I'm going to read you the back of the book, and then I'm going to give you my sort of take on it, because as I was reading this, and then about halfway through issue 1, I was like, wait a second, I have a better pitch for this. Here's the back of the book to start with. The series takes place in Barrow, Alaska, so far north that during the winter, the sun does not rise for 30 days. In the series, vampires, being vulnerable to sunlight, take advantage of the prolonged darkness to openly kill the townspeople and feed at will. So here's the deal. It was originally an unsuccessful film pitch. So they thought it up as a movie. By the way, goodness gracious, created by Steve Niles and Ben Templesmith. So just I can't believe I forgot that. Illustrated by Ben, written by Steve. So definitely a team effort, and they both kind of worked on it as great teams do. Originally it was meant to be a film pitch though, rejected, and so then they decided to come back and make it a comic book first. And then the movie came after that. So like one of those great stories where like this, it was meant to be a movie, became a great comic, and then became a movie anyway. So I love it. Here's my pitch though. Remember how sort of pseudo disappointed we were and how the White Walkers were handled in Game of Thrones? You know, when they cross the wall, yeah, they have like, you know, like in spoilers, you know, in the end of Game of Thrones, the White Walkers blast through the wall and then, you know, they're headed for Winterfell. And we sort of expected, I don't know, we expected kind of a lot from that show, and particularly that sort of encounter. I don't think we really got it. Imagine a modern day take on that, where you're in the north, you're at the wall essentially, like Alaska's at the wall, and the vampires show up again, like the White Walkers appear and start feeding on the town. Like that's basically what this is. This is like if you wanted a hardcore sort of really like lengthier, meatier version of that encounter. This is essentially, I mean, even the way it's drawn, you feel like the White Walkers are almost right there. You know, so it has that sort of vibe to it. Go ahead.
On a story detail there, is it like when you talk about when I read the synopsis of it, it said something about this town plunged into darkness, so I thought it was some artificial thing. I didn't read on enough, or I wasn't paying attention that this is the seasonal sort of thing. So is it like the townspeople know of this danger and they're preparing, like along, you know, in the vein of the White Walkers?
I don't want to spoil that. I think
okay.
I'm gonna be really careful because it's only 3 issues. I could reveal too much, and I think here's what I'll say. So the vampires, you know, they're sort of they're in the town. You know, it's kind of a perfect feeding ground. There is one guy. It's the sheriff, I can never pronounce that. Oleman. Oleman, Ibn Oleman. He saves the town in a very interesting way, and they kind of get to it right out of the gate. And actually, you know, the Wikipedia entry, I don't want to say. I don't want to say too much. The sheriff, it's kind of like one of those classic, like almost like Stephen King, like 80s sort of, you know, Carpenter, you know, John Carpenter, kind of like, you know, there's like one man in this town's gonna. You almost imagine it being Sheriff Hopper from is it Hopper? Right from Stranger Things. We just watched Rachel and I just watched Daybreak, and Brett Hopper is like the main character in that, played by Taye Diggs, amazing. So Hopper, I was just
You're
like,
getting your Hopper.
Am I putting that in? No, but imagine like in
right.
Stranger Things, like Sheriff Hopper fighting vampires. Like that's kind of what this is.
It's like the Jaws.
Yes, exactly. But with this, and then he does something very specific that makes it very interesting. But it also kind of makes it, at that point, I mean, there's aspects of a Western floating around here, like one man's justice. You know, it has that sort of Magnificent Seven kind of, you know, feel to it too, that creeped in a little bit. So once I started to kind of really pick up on the references, you know, subtle or not, like I really, you know, you get a little of that White Walker stuff, and not that it was inspired by that or anything, but like, you know, you get a little of that, you get a little of the Western, you get a little of the, you know, kind of classic 80s movie. Sadly, now if you've seen the movie and you're like, should I read the book? Yes, absolutely read the book, because the movie, as interesting as it is, you know, it captures a mood, it captures a tone. I actually rewatched some of it prior to this, just so last time I saw it was years ago. But the movie captures a tone very well, but it feels dull. Kind of by comparison, the book is drawn almost kind of like, if you remember the illustration in Batman Arkham Asylum, the Grant Morrison book, just that sort of dreamy Sandman kind of like quality of you know, just very moody, very, you know, almost like scary stories to tell in the dark, just kind of that sort of penciling. So the book has a even darker tone, and the movie's cast just doesn't really do it for me. You know, it's got Josh Hartnett playing the sheriff, and he's not that guy, especially after you've seen, you know, Sheriff, you know, Hopper in Stranger Things, and Josh Hartnett is not who you want to be looking at doing that. It's like, give me anybody else. You know, it has Danny Houston, it has Ben Foster, and honestly, Ben Foster should have been the sheriff. Like, I love that guy in anything. It could have been anybody else, but Josh Hartnett you just as your lead, as that guy, just didn't. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. So there's a lot about it that falls down. I almost want them to remake it. And almost, I mean, Blumhouse could remake it for very little money, go the opposite route. Cause the movie we got was, very well shot, very stylized, it looks more like a commercial movie. I want to see a little, almost Blair Witch style indie movie, adaptation of this with just a killer cast. Like just nail that cast and do it again. I think it could be 10 times more terrifying than the other movie was.
Now, were you familiar with the movie before you got the comic? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. No. I didn't realize it was a comic. I was kind of one of those people who I'm like, wait, it's a comic too? Cause that movie was, so prevalent, and, I encountered it before I got back into comics full time. So it's just, that was the surprising thing. I saw it on Comixology about a month or two ago. I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize this was a book. Grabbed it, and then I thought it was like an adaptation of the movie, not, it came first, even though, like I said, it was supposed to be a movie. They made a comic instead and then became a movie. So there you go. But yeah, I really don't want to spoil too much. That's the premise. That's exciting enough for me. Basically vampires during this 30 days of night, winter has come, in Alaska, and it has that vibe of like Winterfell is under siege by these vampires. How does this one guy, what would Ned Stark do by himself? If he had to like protect his family when the White Walkers are storming the castle, like what would he do?
Yeah.
Asking that question out loud sounds interesting. Well, this book is that. Just it happens to be modern day Alaska, not Westeros.
I really appreciate that you called attention to how short the series is, like by comparing it to Walking Dead, which is, I remember some cranky movie critic saying, what makes zombies scary is that they're not running at you. So all of a sudden when they can run, it's like, well, this doesn't seem like a zombie movie anymore. It's that lurching dread. But also I think what makes things scary is like when it is almost like a bottle episode kind of thing. Like you're trapped in the town. There's some, outside circumstance that has led you to this. If that series goes on for 400 issues, that's not necessarily, to me, it's like, I just don't, how are we still, I don't know, we'll see if we ever get out of this pandemic right now, like how interested we are in it later, but I don't know. That's The Walking Dead has always turned me off because it's like, you just know, well, I got to get into so much stuff to get into this.
Here's my problem with The Walking Dead. It went on way too long. Like I just can't. And that's more or less your point. Like I can't. I don't have the time to invest in 33 trade paperbacks just to catch up on this. Number two, I'm just not a big zombie fan anyway. I just don't find them interesting. Like as a narrative device, as a character device. And I get people have told me, but the point of Walking Dead isn't the zombie so much as like, how do people survive? And this, it's more about them. And I'm like, I get that too. But then and they're trying to kind of have their cake and eat it too with Fear the Walking Dead, whatever that next sequel is or prequel. They're revealing kind of this almost like Gilead-like governing body that's been in the shadows this whole time. And
who cares?
I'm like, why not just make another show where that's the point? Like, why do you have to have zombies too? Like, I don't.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care for zombies either. So,
and I really don't care for vampires either, except for when the stories are just really interesting, like 30 Days of Night, like Interview with a Vampire, like
Lost Boys.
What We Do in the Shadows, like Lost Boys. Like people keep finding interesting things to do with vampires, or they kind of you never saw a vampire like this before, have you? I've never seen that with zombies. Part of the problem is actually I take that back. I take that back. There is a movie. We've never talked about this. You may not even know what this is. There's a movie that came out a couple years ago starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Abigail Breslin. It's called Maggie. And you may have seen it was on Netflix. It still might be. You'd see the cover, the poster quite a bit. It is so surprising. And Arnold Schwarzenegger plays Maggie, who's Abigail Breslin, plays her father. And she's basically turning into a zombie throughout the entire course of the movie, from like start to kind of as it goes on. So it's like she's got a disease, and his father doesn't want to kill her. Like it's kind of the old Yeller story. Like he doesn't want to end her, and so he just kind of lets it progress. It is so like you've never seen Schwarzenegger in a movie like this. Number one, number two, it's the only thing I can think of where zombies are actually interesting. Like you can actually like do a twist where it's like, oh wow, this is a part of the human condition that I didn't know could be part of this. So that's the only thing I can think of. Is there anything else that's big that I'm missing, where it's like, wow, I've never seen zombies that way before.
Well, I mean, trying to tie it together with the theme of our episode, I think that's zombies more so than vampires in recent years, but a little bit of both. People are trying to deconstruct that trope, like they put it in a new, there's things like Zombie Land.
But the zombies aren't different, right? Like they're just still the same archetypical character.
Or like Shaun of the Dead or something. It's like it's different circumstances, so it's a take on the zombie movie, but it's still a zombie movie. Yeah. And I think what makes, Fangs fresh as a vampire book is that there's just this different attitude about it. What if this is all okay and it's just a romance? Like that's, I love okay. That. 30 Days a Night, although it doesn't sound like it's like deconstructing too much, is putting it in that like capsule of like, hey, you got 30 days, you're in this small town. You figure it out, Yeah.
Yeah.
And I, man, to circle back to like what I need to go back and revisit it, but I think a fantastic vampire movie, correct me if I'm wrong, Lost Boys, like that's another of those things too, where it was like, hey, let's modernize this. It's not going to be, an Anne Rice kind of thing. Yeah. And it only affects this small town. And it's like everyone knows, or like people know about it, or the vampires know each other, or whatever. And I don't know, that movie to me just, epitomizes like how to do it right.
Yeah,
For me, at least. Yeah, I'm another.
It's just not something, again, at that time in the world, like there really wasn't, I don't think we'd ever seen that flavor of vampires before.
Right,
so
exactly.
It's, if you can keep giving me something new, and I'll even, as terrible as it is, I'll even throw the Twilight movies in there too, because even that's something you haven't seen before. Like, I mean, prior to that, like, who'd ever heard of a vampire that can get into the sun, but they just happen to sparkle? They don't die. It's just like, okay,
Blade.
Well, that's, really?
Daywalkers.
The Daywalkers, but I'm talking like vampire, like they didn't sparkle.
True. That's
like
true.
The vampires themselves didn't just go in the sun and go, I can't reveal myself because I'll sparkle. I'm like, well, that's something we haven't seen before. All right. I'll take that too, I guess, So yeah, I think I love your pick. I think my pick, if you're wanting something a little, start with Todd's, like have a nice sort of comfortable thing, or start with mine, and then Todd's can be like a nice palate cleanser after you're like, oh my God, like after you've had this harrowing journey. It's like, I just want something to fall asleep to and not be scared to death. Like, I think maybe go to Todd's, and then you can have a great little night.
I love that we started out this episode mentioning Infidel and Harrow County, because those are also great Halloween picks. If you want spooky comics to read, like, for sure, those are they. I don't know that we've done too many Halloween themed episodes. Those happened to be around Halloween because my book club pick was the Halloween book club. That's why I read it at that time. But those are two good ones. I got a question for you that's just to wrap up Halloween stuff, which is like, what are some of your favorite horror movies, given that neither you nor I likes vampires or zombie themed stuff too much? Oh,
good question. I like this one. And we're talking about horror movies in the broad sense. So, I would say in no particular order, Blair Witch, definitely up there. It may even be my number one.
Have you rewatched that? I was thinking of that just the other day.
I rewatched it recently. So when I first saw, so you have to think back. I mean, if you're a younger listener, if you were born like after 1997, this is old history to use. But like when Blair Witch first came out, there was about a 3-week span of time, maybe a month, where everybody thought it was real, because the marketing campaign was, this is real. This is actually found footage. It's not, I was mistaken. I had always said that was the first time we'd seen a campaign like that. There's actually another indie film that came out before that, a couple years before. I forget the name of it, but I'm always corrected like, yeah, but that, blah, blah, blah came first. So I'm like, okay.
I think what for me made Blair Witch stand out was, I remember that marketing campaign was so centered online, and specifically like their website was an experiential website where you could watch some of the clips, and like it was all dark and spooky and stuff. And it happened at a time where I had just gotten out of college and was in a job where I had sort of full-time all-day access to the internet.
Yeah.
So, it was like I'm checking my email or whatever, and I find that someone sends me that page or whatever, and I'm like at work going, what the hell am I looking at?
Yes.
And it was before there was like
Glorious.
widespread debunking on blogs or Twitter or so
Imagine, okay, here's a modern day comparison. Imagine, like, how QAnon is this thing that just keeps gaining steam. It's like, that's kind of how the Blair Witch thing was. It's like you just fell down this rabbit hole, and you're like, oh, and then you became like a Blair Witch truther. You're like, somebody has to go find them. They're still there. Like, it's like there's these children have been lost for years, and we got to go find them.
What an interesting one, because I just thought of that movie the other day and thought I've never revisited it, but I mean,
Can I pitch you real quick? So
Yeah.
like, I want to give some context too, because I saw it after, like, they about a month later, it came out like, actually no, it is a fake movie. But then you respect it more because you find out how they shot it. It was as immersive as they could make it. They shot it linearly, more or less linearly, from start to finish in the order that you see it. And they would send the crew out, like they'd have like a production meeting, before they went into the woods, everybody, and they kind of map everything out, and then they'd send the crew out with their cameras, and then the directors / writers would, every night when the actual cast slept in an actual tent, just like you see, the director and writer would come out there, and they'd leave little notes and messages about kind of their next day's activities. Like, this is what we're going to want you to do. We want you to come in here. We have a surprise waiting for you. My favorite one is the night that the children's hands start rubbing the tent. Like, that message that morning was, you're not going to get any sleep tonight. And I was just like, and that's all they told them, so they just kind of wandered around doing their stuff, which is amazing. So that was like, I saw it knowing that, and even knowing that, I think it was like one of the last times it was it was right before Halloween. So it was probably like that, because it came out that summer, like that August, I believe, and then it had I think
it was a summer thing, yeah.
But I remember it getting really popular, like right as school was starting. Like, everybody was like, "Oh my God, have you seen it?" So I saw it kind of mid-October when it kind of faded, it was starting to fade down on the tail end. And even then, I was in the theater, I was watching it, and the whole time I'm like, this is not scary in the slightest. This is just, this is a really well-made documentary.
Okay.
As it went along, I got a little more creeped out. And I didn't notice that kind of my subconscious was getting a lot more agitated, because I was just kind of watching this procedural, like, this wayward procedural. And then they get to the house. Yeah. And it's like all the little things that my subconscious was like collecting along the way was like delivered to my conscious on a silver platter. It's like,
yikes.
Oh shit. And then I was so disturbed by that house scene. Like, every second of it is like perfectly designed to just creep the hell out of you. Like, and I've had people tell me, that's the house scene's stupid. I'm like, dude, it is the creepiest thing, because you never see what's in there with them. And then you never see it. You never, like, you never physically see some kind of weird monster or a shadow. You never see anything. And then you see the guy standing in the corner, and her camera gets knocked. It's the creepiest thing in the world. So rewatched it, I think, a year ago, and that whole sequence still stands up. Especially if it's been a few years, I highly recommend it, because you'll probably forget a lot of things along the way. Like, oh my God, that's right.
21 years.
Oh, dude, you should definitely watch it again. It'll feel new. It'll be familiar, but it'll feel new, and you'll just think about all the things it's inspired since, like paranormal activity movies, all of these sort of point of view horror movies. Like, Blair Witch was kind of the origin point for most of it, because everybody saw it, holy crap, this can be I think they spent $6 million making it, if that, made like
and
$300
I bet
million.
most of that was on like
film
post
stock. Yeah, all that stuff.
and marketing.
I mean, it was a truly indie movie that just hit all the right notes, and then had the best marketing campaign. So of course it inspired all of this like work that came after. I keep gushing about this one. I haven't even said anything else, but I'm
so fascinated by that, because that literally was on my mind just the other day, because I was talking to a friend about horror movies, and that friend had said to me like, "Oh, that's right, you're not a big horror fan." And then I'm thinking like, yeah, but for some reason I've seen like a ton of weird horror. So for me, my experience with Blair Witch, this is why it's also so fascinating, and why I wonder if it would hold up for me, is because like I said, this was like my first office job where I got to like, so like see that marketing campaign. But also because of that, because I was not like in school, I had more or less unlimited time to stare at that site. I realized like, oh, this is all marketing.
Yeah.
So I went to the movie knowing it was fake,
Yeah.
but I went with my girlfriend and her mom.
No.
And they lost their fucking minds. Like, so I was watching it like, this is a disturbing film, but they were on a different plane.
I've been with somebody when that happened. It's kind of amazing to see, because you're like, holy shit, this is resonating like religion does to some people. Like, this is
right
like, at a base level.
I think in their guts they were like, I knew it. We like walk out and they're telling ghost stories or something. But I hope they were relieved that that's a good moment to be a spoiler and say, okay, you got the entertainment value. That was all made up, But
yeah.
But it's interesting to talk about that, like how it builds up to that moment in the house, whatever, because Paranormal Activity, which all of us knew was like just fiction going into it, it still pushed all my buttons, to where I was like rattled in that movie. That was more of like that disturbing kind of movie, but I would instantly, like, what I thought of like favorite horror movies, I think of like The Shining or The Thing. You mentioned John Carpenter, and like The Thing stands out to me, and also like Alien.
Alien's a good one. Alien's, I always forget Alien is a proper horror movie.
Exactly.
It's a monster movie. It's like, it's all those things, just happens to be on a spaceship,
Right. I really love the clarification that friends who are big fans have offered me of like, Alien is a horror movie, Aliens is an action movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, right, that makes sense, because I think as a kid I saw Aliens first, and then you go back and you're like, oh, what's happening? Like, this is not as cool as the next one, because you're terrified.
I'm trying to think what else I've seen recently that's considered horror that I really liked. I mean, you don't count like Escape Room as that kind of movie, do you?
That's a movie? There's a movie called Escape Room?
Yeah, it's really good. It's really fun.
I mean,
it's don't expect a lot from it, but like it's the concept. I mean, it's literally these people get suckered into this sort of, through this contest, suckered into this mansion that happens to just be a series of endless escape rooms with different themes. It's like a Nickelodeon kids show where people die. It's kind of amazing. And then there's going to be a sequel that would have come out already had it not been for COVID.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen any of
Saw's
the Blumhouse movies.
There we go. That's my other one. Get Out is.
Oh, Get Out. Yes, I see.
Is that a thriller though, or is that horror?
I mean, I think it's a horror movie.
Okay, then that's on my list too. That's probably my most recent. Like,
I think there's a large contingent of the population that would correct us and tell us it's a documentary. And I can't dispute that exactly. But yeah, that terrified me. That's probably the last one I've really seen in the theater that was in a thriller, suspense, horror genre.
I did not like what they did with Dr. Sleep. The first half that came out that was last year, for God's sake.
You did a podcast on that last year.
Yeah, but just to sum up, first half very loyal to the book. Second half, they decided to be more loyal to the Stanley Kubrick Shining movie, and it suffered as a result. It's like, man, that book was perfect. I'm a giant fan of that book because The Shining is like a horror book, right? Like if you were talking about genres, like The Shining book, and even The Shining, the Steven Weber TV miniseries is the book. So if you're comparing and contrasting, you've seen that, that's the book. The Jack Nicholson thing is a adaptation of the book. That's not the story necessarily.
And my friends loved it when we talk about King adaptations.
I can't watch that. The Tim Curry one, as silly as it is, gave me so many nightmares as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old that I'm like, I can't. As much as I like the look of this new one, I can't do it. I'm like, I don't want to go through that again.
Yeah, Stephen King is up there with vampires and zombies for me. Like, I don't care for him. So
really, you don't really? Now hang on. Because Stephen King's done more than just horror books. He's written all kinds of stuff. Like,
it's too verbose.
I
confess the only thing I've read from him is his book about writing called On Writing, and it's really good.
Yeah,
but his theory for how to write stuff is crazy, because it's just the Stephen King theory, which is like, just sit down and start making up stuff. And where I come from, the opposite side, which is like, no, outline, then write it. Improvise
right?
within the outline. Yeah, exactly. He just doesn't seem to acknowledge that there is another way.
Well, there's people who outline who just get stuck endlessly outlining. I'm kind of one of them. If I don't watch out, I just outline and outline. Versus like if I just started writing, but then you don't get to do world building. You don't get to do all the cool stuff you do when you outline. It just gives you so many more tools. I think.
It's like, it's hard to deny that there are like great. There's Stand By Me, there's Shawshank Redemption. There's like great stuff that comes from Stephen King, but he's just got a ratio that's bad. There's Maximum Overdrive, there's Dream Catchers or whatever it's called. Right. There's, it's like, oh, dude, hit the brakes. Like, you're diluting your brand, man.
We should do we should do like a Funny or Die sort of style trailer where it's like, from the writer of Maximum Overdrive, and just like list all his terrible things and like, just
he directed that one as well.
Oh God.
Yeah, directorial debut.
What? Oh, Steven.
Yeah.
No, Steven.
Wow, I'm leading this into bummer territory, but I don't know. I obviously, like, just talking this out loud, neither of us mentioned like sort of gory slasher picks.
I'm not into them.
I mean, neither.
I just don't. I mean, you see one, you're kind of like, okay, and they're all sort of that. Oh, I know another horror movie that I've seen recently that I really liked. Hide and Seek. No, is that oh shoot, not Hide and Seek. Is that? Hang on.
There is a Hide and Seek movie, but it's older.
No, you're not that. I'm sorry. Oh Jesus, it just came. Oh God, it's got a blonde actress. She's marrying into this family, and they're all trying to hunt her.
Oh yeah. It's just on Netflix or something.
Addie McDowell is in it. And I typically don't like her, and she's playing, or Andie MacDowell, sorry, and she's playing a really
Ready
fun
or
character.
Not.
Ready or Not. That is my other favorite horror movie recently. That's Ready or Not has one of the best endings of any horror movie of all time. I'm just gonna say that they do something that it's the ballsiest ending I've ever seen. It's so fun. I really want to spoil it. I'm not gonna, but it's like, it's
funny because you and I, honestly, like in our last episode, you spoiled parts of The Boys. I was still excited to watch it. Like, we went in, we told people, hey, we're going to spoil this in the course of this episode. Yeah. You didn't do it right up front. There's a good buffer, but it doesn't bother me to get spoiled about things like that where, I'm going to watch it anyway. But there is a thing like I knew going into the Blair Witch that if I had made a point of telling my girlfriend and her mother that this was fake, that it would have ruined the experience for them.
Yes, it would have.
It's sort of, if you knew it from the marketing or whatever, like when I knew it going in, it didn't ruin it for me, but I knew it would have for them, because to them the terror was like the ghosts, it was the idea that like this ghost is real, or this witch.
But there's the genius of Blair Witch. But here's the thing, I forgot to say this earlier. The genius of Blair Witch is truly that they let your imagination fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, they do, and they have every temptation to not. The only thing they indulge is that creepy little museum of stick figures that are hanging in the woods. Like, then you're like, oh God, because then they actually kind of give a physicality to the terror. Otherwise, it's just your damn imagination. And then if you happen to be living in a place like I do, where you're basically smack dab in the woods, you got to be really careful when you watch that movie. Rachel and I were talking the other night, and I was like, when my daughter, I'm not going to forbode my daughter from watching anything except for like maybe the Blair Witch. I'm like, look, as long as you're living in this house, you don't want to do that, because you will not want to live in this house anymore. Like, just ignore it. Like, when you're living in the city, like the big city or something, then watch it. You don't, it just,
yeah. When you're like out in the woods,
we live in the woods, for God's sake.
Yeah,
like, basically,
exactly.
like we're a block away from the woods. Like, bears wander in all the time. So it's like, it's not set and setting. This is an important mantra. Set and setting is just as applicable to watching horror movies as it is to taking psychedelics. Make sure you're in the right frame of mind and you're in a comfortable place.
Speaking of that, can't believe I forgot about what has freaked me out more than any other movie in the past couple of years is Midsommar.
That's
I
a
don't know if you
horror
saw
movie
that.
too, isn't it?
Oh Lord!
Oh, that didn't freak me out at all. That was delightful. That was, I mean, it was bonkers as hell, but it was
so
just
bizarre.
like,
It's not. You know, from the three I named, like as favorites, like Shining, Thing, and Alien, like it's obvious that I like you're trapped in this situation. How do you escape? Kind of plot. And Midsommar was like, there's no escape. You know,
I
like
loved it.
that.
Yeah.
That's the thing that just freaks me out. And also, Googling simply horror movies, I learned that Underwater with Kristen Stewart that I saw earlier this year was supposedly a horror movie, which I guess makes sense. But I don't know if we've reviewed that on the podcast. I actually liked it, but I guess it was a horror movie.
Did you see Midsommar in the theater or on TV?
Yes, theater.
Oh, bummer. I'm so sad I didn't get to it. It left before I discovered it. Or rather, we didn't make it in time, one of those things. So then we had to watch it on TV. And I was still very impressed, but I can only imagine the enormity of like some of that location, like just the way they shot it. It must have just been stunning on a bigger screen.
It's more, that's the thing is that they proved, and I can't think of another movie that's done this, that you can shoot in bright daylight
Yes.
in this very colorful palette and be like utterly horrified, you know, at what you're seeing.
That was amazing to see that daylight can be scary.
Yeah. We tend to just shoot everything in like the, you know, grays and browns, that kind of palette, and it was definitely different.
That's got it. But so Midsommar you'd count as a horror? I guess it would be a horror.
I think so. I mean, it's not even like suspense or thriller. It's just pure horror, I think.
That's true. Yeah. Okay.
Because there's nothing else, you know.
How do you feel? And then I apologize. We've wandered into like the Todd and
we
Taylor
wandered
movie
way
show.
off. That's
but
cool.
how do you feel about Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Well, I mean, it's like a lot of those like early '80s slashers where, I mean, I don't like really have affection for it, but it seems to stand alone in its own genre, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I saw that, and I must have seen the original Friday the 13th. I only recently went and watched Sleepaway Camp, the first one, and, Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, I saw all those, like, as a kid, and I that probably just, you know, cemented it for me of, like, what I like and don't like, you know?
Nice,
like,
yeah. I didn't know. I watched both the original and the remake because the original, the premise is amazing, but the production's kind of junk. You know, it's just like, this could have been scarier in terms of its, you know, there's some scene, the family dinner scene was, you know, appropriate, but everything else, there's some other parts where I'm just like, it's just a guy in a mask. Whereas the newer movie, obviously the aesthetic is much more appropriate, but then it doesn't have that raw quality. So it's almost too commercial. Again, I haven't found that sweet spot. I really think they could do a Blair Witch treatment to that, which could be really interesting. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a good discussion. I do have one. I know we're about to wrap up, and I just want to put this acknowledgement in there. And from both of us, say congratulations to our often podcast co-host, Emily Kelly Cunin, and her husband, Peter Cunin, who just had their first child.
They did.
And congratulations.
Yay. Congrats, guys.
Taylor is close behind you.
Very close behind you. Yeah. We're 36 weeks as of Saturday, and then it's anytime after. I mean, probably more, closer to mid-November, but like it could be anytime after Saturday. Hard to say.
That's a crazy thing to say. It could be anytime after Saturday.
It's okay, and it's like it almost feels like my favorite. Have I given you my metaphor for this yet? Here's my metaphor. So. Imagine being told, we've received a message from the stars, and they're coming, and we're gonna make first contact sometime in November. We don't know exactly when. Because we, the way they travel, we just, we can't quite tell. But sometime in November, we're gonna make first contact, and you're like, oh my God! So then, like, several questions. Number one, is it gonna be the best? What's it gonna be? And they go, well, by all likelihood, it will be one of the greatest. It will transform humanity forever. Number one, so life will never be the same again after this day, and by all accounts, it'll be good. But it might go badly for us too. We don't know. So that's just kind of up in the air too. Anytime, and you're just like, oh my God, so should we go to work? Like, is work going to be meaningless after this? Like, should we start shutting the churches down now? Or do we take this time, and literally acknowledge, like, this is the last time we're going to be like this. Let's really live it up. Like, what do you do? Like, it's the same idea as just like this vague time in November, this kid will just appear. And it's just like, holy crap. And the weirdest thing is, like, kind of like with, when you go to a funeral and then just everybody kind of goes about their day, it's that same idea where you're like, a new life is in this world. And then it's like, within 24 hours, you're just kind of sitting here like, and we're just still doing our thing. And now we have this other person with us now. And you almost think that there should be some kind of, credits should roll, and then you die or something, not like, and you just go back to normal reality again. It's all done.
It becomes hardcore practical right away.
Yeah.
You've got, biological needs to attend to instantly. So
yeah.
Man, that's exciting too. But yeah, we don't often talk about babies, which is a good thing. We're mostly about comic books and geek culture,
and we won't be talking about babies even after she's here. Like, once in a great while, I'll reference it, but I'm not one of those people. So
I thought the title was going to be Pamperism going forward, and it was just going to be about diapers. Yeah, when you're
the diaper's worth having on your shelf, and then some.
Totally, yes.
In one of our then some episodes, we talk about strollers. Need one? Should you have one? We're not, because
I haven't even plugged the website yet. But yes, if you wanted to find all these old episodes, they're at panelism.inc, INK, and we are on Instagram, panelism.inc, and that's the best place to catch us. And go back and listen to these old comic books, Harrow County and Infidel and Adulthood is a Myth. And check out Fangs and 30 Days of Night.
Yes, do it. And happy Halloween, happy fall festival, happy whatever your
Scorpio birthdays,
time of the sea, whatever you call it. Just enjoy it while we have it, because it will be another year until we get it again. How's that?
That works.
It's my folksy wisdom. I'm sure the music's just gonna play out while I say this.
I felt like we got to the play out part before I said panelism.inc, and I was like, no, let me get to the